I'm Boyd Stevenson with Game Castle College Park. I am honored to be joined today by Fred Hicks, the publisher from Evil Hat Productions, who is also probably most originally famous for being one of the co-creators of the Fate core system. But since then, going into Evil Hat with so many different products, perhaps most famously right now, Thirsty Sword Lesbians.
That's way up there. Blades in the Dark, Monster of the Week.
Yeah. And congratulations on 2 Ennies last year. I mean, that must have been a really, really big deal.
That was the validation I really wanted to see reach the team for TSL.
That's
they deserved it. April did such good work on it, and it just came together perfectly.
Are y'all up for anything this year?
I think we've got a nomination for Improv for Gamers Second Edition.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I will definitely keep an eye out on that. Also Blades in the Dark. I know a lot of our community that's played regularly here.
Yeah, it's all over the place now.
Scum and Villainy, Monster of the Week, and a bajillion Fate supplements.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about a few different items. A lot of your newest projects, some in various places in the crowdfunding stage. I think mostly done. Apocalypse Keys, Girl by Moonlight, and finally the Codex of World supplement for Monster of the Week, which I think you've got a free copy of right there. But we're also going to talk about some of your less well-known work, including as the keeper of the Bits and Mortar program, which is very near and dear to my heart as a retailer.
Near and dear to mine.
And finally, to all of you tuning in at home, I want to remind everyone that number one, please be super nice and say great, nice things to Fred in the comments. But also, if you like this sort of stuff, remember to like and subscribe to the channel and to comment that way, because that's how we make decisions about what sort of videos we're going to do in the future. All right. Well, so Fred, before we jump into all the stuff going on with Evil Hat Productions, how did you get into the role-playing game hobby?
It bit me early. I think I was on a playground in third grade. Back in 19. And a friend of mine was playing with
that year.
Yeah, that year. Everyone knows. It takes us way back. A friend of mine was playing with strange-looking dice. I'm like, what are those? And even just the dice got me, because it was unusual, right? And I don't know that I really played role-playing games for a huge amount of time from there on forward, but I sure messed around with them.
Okay.
Redbox, D&D on forward. It just worked its way in. It was lonely fun when I didn't have a lot of friends. It was great fun when I did.
And I do remember that Redbox. We actually had a group in store talking yesterday, and someone was talking about how they went back to, not the full adventure that was in the DM's guide in the Redbox, but the little play through yourself adventure that they remembered as being so expansive as a child, and rereading the PDF as an adult, they were like, it's 4 rooms.
It's everything really just kind of felt gigantic at the time, and it condenses really, really quick. I mean, God, I barely remember the fine details of it, but I do know that my friend and I almost immediately started house rolling so we could roll bigger dice for our stats, so we could show up with bigger things. Very much a third grade mentality for D&D. But I think it also oriented my brain on these rules are not sacrosanct. You can mess with them, you can change them, you can see how those changes change how the game plays. So I was a role player and a system tinkerer almost simultaneously in terms of my entry into the hobby.
Okay. I mean, and that's probably a really great segue, because you decided to make a career out of this. I mean,
much to my surprise.
Well, I guess, what were you doing before, and what made you decide to go full hog here?
So after college, I ended up at a Maryland-based internet startup called Digex. But I'd gotten there because I'd met a bunch of friends online via like text chat based gaming,
Mm-hmm.
mostly centered around the Amber Diceless role playing game.
Okay.
So now you know that I'm talking about the 90s. Um, and they, like many people who were online connected and geeks, were getting into the whole .com, bubble expansion. And they invited me out to check out Maryland and see if I wanted to work, starting in the customer service thing, but it very quickly arced through a bunch of other stuff in tech. Did that on up to 2006.
Okay.
And during that span, uh, uh, Rob Donahue and I did enough house ruling to the fudge system that it was really starting to become its own thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the earliest form of Fate. And we weren't doing it with any sort of intent to be publishers or anything like that. We
Mm-hmm.
just like putting our rules down. We like making them look nice. We like sharing them with everyone in a PDF. So it was an early free rule set that we circulated around and got, at least for the scale at which we were operating at the time, pretty popular.
Mm-hmm.
And also started picking up some attention and some like indie RPG awards for best free game. And around 2005, a friend of mine who I'd also met through that online stuff, Jim Butcher, who's the author of the Dresden Files series of novels, um, uh, called me up and said, so I was talking with my agent, who's also a gamer, and we were talking about how people were asking if they could license the Dresden Files and make a role-playing game out of it. And he was like, I don't know, I don't know these people, I don't know, I don't know if I can trust them with my baby. And his agent said to him, don't you have some award-winning game designer friends that you could contact instead? So Jim gave me a call and said, essentially, hey, I know you're not even a publisher, but would you like to make the Dresden Files role-playing game? I'm like, let me talk to Rob and my wife and his wife and see if we can, afford to put any sort of attention into that. And we got thumbs up across the board. Pulled some cash together to sort of form the initial Evil Hat. I think we put at most $10,000 into the company to get it started. And then thought, we'll have this game designed in like no time. It'll be fine. That was 2005. Dresden Files role-playing game was released in 2010. Yeah. So yeah, first, in order to publish your friend's IP as a role-playing game, you must first become a publisher and learn how to do any of that stuff. And that learning how to do any of that stuff was an arc through a bunch of indie design spaces and communities that resulted in Don't Rest Your Head and Spirit of the Century, our earlier releases prior to the Dresden Files role-playing game. Then when the Dresden Files role-playing game finally came out, it was a big level up for the company, and we started this sort of snowball of success through a few other, big events like that until somehow I got to today.
And that's really wild because normally you talk to people and their trajectory is I was a player and then I was making my own material and then I was writing my own game. And then if the very, very fewest will say I became a publisher, and you kind of circumvented that and were like, I'll go player, writing my own homebrew stuff, thinking about it. Then I'll become a publisher, and then I'll do my own.
I mean, really, up until 2010, the main purpose of Evil Hat existing as a commercial entity was to publish the Dresden Files role-playing game. Then we did, and we're like, so what do we do now?
Right.
And people were really wanting to get at the heart of Fate as it existed in the Dresden Files role-playing game. So I set two of the folks we had worked with on that on the job of essentially extracting that and smoothing it out so that it would work as a I don't think we used the word generic, a settingless role-playing game. And that ultimately became okay, we've gotten it out here, but now we see a bunch of ways to improve it. So we're going to do some improvements on top of that. And that's what became Fate Core in the hands of Leonard Balsera and Ryan Macklin primarily.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just been building and building. We had a stretch of messing around in board gaming card games, but that wasn't enough like our like community interactions and other aspects of the work to role playing games that ultimately, um, although we did, I think we had like a good 5 6 years of our sort of our board card game phase. We've decided to pull back from that and focus on what we do best, which is role playing games, and you're seeing some of them here.
And we've talked. You've done some publishing of the stuff that you make. You've published some other people's stuff. You've done some work where you've had some design space in it, but maybe someone else was in there. You talked about Ryan Macklin, who has published directly.
Yeah.
Katanas and Trench Coats.
Katanas and Trench Coats.
That's it's like
Speaking of the '90s.
Yes, exactly. I mean, let's distill it down to its most
the
base
absolute
essence of '90s. But you mentioned your designers for Thirsty Sword Lesbians. When you're working with outside designers, what are you looking for? What's kind of the one thing that you want to consider, or the one box you want to see checked before you sit down with somebody?
We really like to see, because there's a number of us at Evil Hat that sort of converse over the submissions we get. We really want to see a point of view that we don't think is getting as well served in the broader hobby as it might be. Because I've, like I said, I started in third grade, and for most of the time that I've been in the hobby, it has served my straight white male self quite well. But it does not often reach out to marginalized groups as well as it could. Uh, and I don't think that Evil Hat is going to be like the end all be all of addressing that in the hobby, but at least in the late 2010s onward, we've tried to make sure our focus is much more away from what the founder of the company looks like, and more like what the creative folks who are bringing games to us look like.
Speaking as a gay man myself and the owner of a game store that has an employment base that is 50% GLBTQ plus.
This is
We love
a big
seeing
plus for
that
bringing
sort
my
of
kids
thing.
to the D&D camp.
So this is what I love to ask anybody. What games are you playing in right now?
I'm most of what I'm actually getting time to play is fifth edition.
Okay.
Because it is the bedrock beer and pretzels game for a lot of social groups, and a lot of the like working professional friends of mine. They get to their Friday and they're done with hard thinking.
Sure.
And fifth edition is kind of a like, okay, everything is familiar enough, we can just kind of let go and
It's the lingua franca of the role playing.
yeah, exactly.
Game
And it's got room for system mastery. It's got room for role playing improvisation, all that stuff. That's not to say that we don't reach out into other things. Although I don't run my own games that often because it's that whole separation of work and play.
I understand completely.
Like if I'm looking at a game that I've published in the middle of playing it, and I spot a typo that is going to fully derail me in ways that it wouldn't anyone else. So there's that. I also recently ran a one shot of Brindlewood Bay.
Okay, now I don't know that one.
Oh, that's a fun one. It's from the Gauntlet online community, I think I want to say. And it is a what's a good way to? Okay, this is my tagline for it. It's H.P. Lovecraft's Murder She Wrote.
Oh, okay. I'm sold.
Yeah, you play uniformly. All of the player characters are meddling little old ladies.
Okay.
Who are in a small tourist town somewhere, I think in Massachusetts, where an improbably high number of murders happen.
Okay.
But and it starts out more like Murder She Wrote, and has really ingenious method for uncovering a mystery where no one at the table knows including the DM, knows what the answer is.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And that actually was a big influence on Apocalypse Keys for the designer there. But as you progress through a series of mysteries, if you're running it in a longer form, you'll start to have hints at the Void and the midwives of the Void, who are this cult who are tied to the murders that keep happening in Brindlewood Bay.
Okay.
And ultimately, you're building towards a climax where like something eldritch arises from the bay, and little old ladies who've maybe picked up a little bit of occult stuff and a whole lot of like Agatha Christie-esque like ideas of how to address problems have to face it down.
I love a
As the
good
culmination of the
system
game.
that's either GM-less or that where the GM may not necessarily know everything.
Yeah.
Fiasco is a very popular system here at our store for helping newer players learn to role play.
Yeah.
It's that they're two different skills. One is the system mastery of what do the dice mean, but there's also the what does it mean to inhabit this other person. And it sounds like this is a great game.
Yeah, I mean,
that.
I think Brindlewood Bay and a lot of stuff in the Powered by the Apocalypse space, which I would include Blades in the Dark as at least a strong cousin relationship to, uh, has been doing a lot about that we were originally going for with Fate, which is like sort of deconstruct what makes stories hit, like what are the beats, where do these land, and how well can we point system at that? So the sorts of stories we're hoping to tell with the role-playing game actually naturally arise, both from the mechanical interactions as well as the story elements that are being brought to the table. And one of the things that Brindlewood Bay does, what I was talking about, the mystery element, is you get a list of possible clues, and as the GM, you're mainly running around embodying NPCs and making all of them seem suspicious.
Okay.
And then the players start to connect the clues together with the things that have been said by the NPCs, which are all suspicious, and have to start putting together a theory. Once they have a theory, they then make a roll to test whether or not their theory is right.
Okay.
But it has to integrate all of those details that they've uncovered so far. So yeah, I had no idea that the Russians were behind the rich guy who got murdered on his yacht. But as it turned out, that made total sense with the clues and suspicious behaviors I've rated in front of it.
Cthulhuovich and Pasterkov.
Cthulhuovich, yes, yes, the well-known Cthulhuovich. Ooh, now I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Well, this is the end of the first of our three-part series where we are going to be talking with Fred Hicks. But tune back in with us. We're going to be catching folks up on what's happening at Evil Hat Productions, as well as talking about the Bits and Mortar program. After all of these have gone up individually, we're also going to do the whole long unedited interview with Fred. So hoping everyone likes that.
Hope you catch all the Easter eggs.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back. Absolutely no time has passed for us here, but it may have been a little while for some of you. It's the magic of video.
Indeed.
I'm here with Fred Hicks from Evil Productions. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down. We're going to talk a little bit in this segment about what's going on at Evil Hat right now.
Sure.
And you've brought along some of these are ones from the store, and some of these are items that aren't even out yet. But I think the first one you said you want to talk about is the Apocalypse Keys, which is kind of like a fun spin on a secret agent monster drama using Power of the Apocalypse. But what's the 411 about this soon-to-be on shelves book?
So Apocalypse Keys is like, what if you were playing Hellboy? Every player at the table was playing Hellboy on some level, with the power to ultimately destroy the world. You are a potential, but not yet, harbinger of the apocalypse. Your emotional life is also messy as hell.
Okay.
So you are dealing with all of the complicated feelings about being a monster, being held apart from humanity, but humanity depending on you to save the world from the apocalypse that you might bring about, but some other people who've gone further than you absolutely are about to. And Ray Najati, the designer, has taken some influences from Brindlewood Bay, some other things to give this really nice unfolding mystery element, which is also revealing the keys of the apocalypse that are clicking into place, and depending on how well you're pursuing the mystery, you might find yourself showing up too late as the harbinger is like doing something horrible, and you're trying to mitigate the damage.
Mhm.
Sometimes you get there ahead of them, and you have to have this heartbreaking heart to heart with someone who used to be your lover but is now trying to destroy the world while you still aren't. But she's going to try to convince you that you should.
Okay, I like
Yeah,
this.
yeah. There's a lot of temptation and so forth. And one of
The micro and macrocosms are playing out together.
and for the system geeks out there, one of the very interesting differences about this versus any other Powered by the Apocalypse game is that there are no stats. You have darkness tokens, which you accumulate by playing towards the darker parts of your character.
Oh.
And then you spend those to get your bonus on your 2d6 die roll. Furthermore, in a normal, say normal, but in many Powered by the Apocalypse games, you'll have like the miss, the complicated success, and the full success.
Mhm.
The six or less, 7 to 9, 10 plus.
Mhm.
In Apocalypse Keys, those number bands are different, and the sweet spot is in the middle. So you have fail, succeed, overdo it.
Oh, okay.
So you're actually not trying to get the highest number possible. You're trying to get the number that's right in the middle if you want to keep things under wraps. But if you are like, no, this is the time I'm going to throw down, I'm going to absolutely obliterate my target, but it's going to have some consequences, go for that big plus on your roll.
It's kind of like the Price is Right role-playing game style.
In a way, there's a lot of very interesting tensions that are built into your target being in the middle of the range instead of at the top of the range.
Yeah. I like that. That's not a design space people have explored before.
Exactly. And those two elements combined with the Brindlewood Bay inspired Keys of the Apocalypse mystery unfolding towards confrontation with whatever the harbinger of the week is. But also, also giving a lot of attention to the complex emotional turmoil that each of the playbooks essentially represents a different take on.
Mm-hmm.
A number of which can speak to aspects of the queer experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that feeling that a lot of folks early on in like discovering that identity of themselves, where they feel very othered, they feel like the monster amongst the humans and so forth. And there's a sort of a metaphorical element in the playbooks that speaks to various aspects of that.
And hey, not to speak for the entire community, but sometimes when you do let it out for the first time, you may go a little far.
You may go a little far.
You do roll that 5 and that 6.
Indeed. Yeah, sometimes you just overshoot.
Well, that's fantastic. When is Apocalypse Keys hitting shelves?
It has hit shelves.
Okay, so it's officially out?
It is officially out. I think we got it out in mid-April. The crowdfunding concluded late last year.
Okay.
It's well worth checking out. There's a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games out there, but we really strongly felt that this one came at it from just a bunch of different angles that we just haven't seen.
Awesome. All right. Well, and then I know there's another project that has kind of just finished the crowdfunding process, and that's going to be Girl by Moonlight. Yeah.
Girl by Moonlight is it's in that magical girl genre in anime, but it is not necessarily exclusively an anime game. It's got a tragic element to it. So you're playing magical girls whose hearts might fall into eclipse, which brings out their dark side, or they might be able to transcend the self that they present to the everyday and become their truer self, and thus access their abilities for more constructive outcomes and stuff like that.
Okay.
And it has 4 different setting playsets in it, ranging from mech pilots in space trying to save the last remnants of humanity from the leviathans that are pursuing them. There's one that's pretty close to a Sailor Moon style.
Sure.
People are, of course, going to show up for that. There's one that involves diving into dreams to try to uncover a conspiracy. And then there's the darkest one, which of course is the one that I would be most likely to run. Under a Rotting Sky, Beneath the Rotting Sky, something like that, which is structurally set up such that the final fight of the campaign that you run in it, you will all die. But it's about that like what sort of things are you going to achieve and change about the world and make the world a better place through your ultimate sacrifice against unimaginable odds.
And there's something to be said for that, because if you sort of, it's like watching that movie where at the beginning you're like, the narrator's like, so this is how I died, and
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, did they make it out, it's, was
Yeah.
it worth it?
Knowing
Which is
what
a
your
really
destination is can have a really interesting effect on like gameplay and stories in general. So yeah, 100%.
fantastic.
Yeah, there's that one is derived from the Forge in the Dark system, which you made its original presence in
There we go.
Forge in the Dark. Yeah, it's been in development for a while. Andrew Gillis created it, and they've just spent a lot of time being very careful with the details.
Gotcha.
And making sure that it really hits stuff that speaks to their own experience, as well as the fan base for Magical Girl stories in general.
Okay, great. And finally, we have another product that will be hitting shelves soon. I think it might be a Gen Con release.
Yeah, I think you'll be able to find it at Gen Con, especially if you go to the Indie Press Revolution booth, IPR.
Okay. We're big fans here.
Yeah, IPR is a great place to get lots of really small publisher titles into game stores, which there aren't a lot of avenues for otherwise. But yeah, Codex of Worlds is what we're talking about. It's a supplement for Monster of the Week. We released the hardcover version of Monster of the Week early this year.
Mm-hmm.
And Codex of Worlds brings in a few things. One of the things it brings in is team playbooks.
Mm-hmm.
So similar to the way that Blades in the Dark has crew sheets that are the stats for your group, the stats for your individual.
Mm-hmm.
The team playbooks give you like some linked themes and a few extra moves that you all can tap into, and it sort of sets the overall thing. So like you might go for the road trip oriented ones if you want to do something like Supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
You might do something. One of the ones that is a little bit more oriented towards fighting aliens for a Men in Black kind of riff, and all sorts of stuff in there. There's a bunch of, in fact, I think I have a number on there, but I'm not going to read it right now. There's like 15 or so team playbooks in there for groups to develop that. There's also several different settings that are about taking Monster of the Week out of the default, it's modern day urban fantasy-esque setting, and going into like anything from Witcher style fantasy to a little more fantastical Renaissance fantasy. There's a Stone Age one.
I love that Monster of the Flintstones.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a haunted house element. There's playing in the Gothic century era. So if you want to do a more Victorian oriented Monster of the Week campaign, that stuff's in there, and it gets into how to bring that flavor out of the system, and changes a bunch of different things about how playbooks work, how the core moves work to suit those various settings, as well as the thing we generally like to do with Monster of the Week expansions, a bunch of stuff that you can take parts out or take out whole cloth in order to use with your game.
That's fantastic, and I gotta say, as someone that usually gets stuck with GMing duties, one of the most difficult things can be getting a group of disparate players to put characters together that have some sort of cohesive story. So when you start talking about having, not just a group theme, but or a group playbook, but supporting it with a playbook that will actually give them some mechanical benefits for, hi, let's have a narrative throughput for why you're all here together. It makes storytelling a lot more easy.
I mean, and we've got a range there for all a bunch of different tones that people want. We've got you can go anywhere from Scooby and the Gang to We're Fleeing the Wild Hunt. In terms of the range of options there, it's a lot of really good stuff.
Well, awesome. Well, I did spend a little bit of time on the Evil Hat upcoming product page, and it lists that you all have a whole lot of stuff coming up that's currently in playtesting.
Yes.
We have a very active playtesting community here at Game Castle. That can be everything from the board game side with Break My Game, who's in once a month. We've done some work with the new edition of 13th Age. And so I guess, what's the best way that someone that's an interested playtester can get tied in with Evil Hat? And do you visit stores to do so?
Gosh, I don't visit. Parents is to the contrary. I don't visit
Mhm.
stores that often, at least not to run, because again, if I've got free time to game, I'm generally going to try to do it for myself if I
Sure.
can.
Yeah. You want to have your own time.
Yeah, exactly. But we do have uh, uh, open playtest calls occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're signed up either for our mailing list, which you can get to honestly just by visiting our website, or if you're following us on either Facebook or Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
for as long as that lasts.
I'm sure it'll be threads by the
I'm sure,
time
yeah,
this is
it'll
out.
be threads. We'll just
Twitter.
we'll edit in whatever works, fix it in post. The we'll put out our announcements when we've got an open call for things like that. A lot of the stuff that's in playtest now, we're in an internal playtest phase where we're like trying to make sure it's ready to put in front of a larger population.
Sure.
But we have enough projects going on at any given time. As you can tell, like
That was
easily half a dozen.
not a small list.
No,
yeah,
it's not a small list. And
yeah,
there's another one we kicked off last night that I can't talk about because an NDA is involved. But yeah, we've got stuff going on all the time, and probably at least a couple times a year we're running some sort of wider playtest for one of the games that we're hoping to usually bring to crowdfunding within a year or so past that playtest window, because it's usually one of our like we've gotten all the text or enough of the text to the point where we really want to get it validated with as many opinions and viewpoints as possible.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic. Is there anything else you want to tell us about what's going on at Evil Hat that we haven't been able to cover so far?
That's a tough one because I have people for that sort of thing. And project manager is so much better. Sean Nittner, and if you follow him on social media, he will occasionally pop up with saying, "Hey, word up on the hat," and he'll go through the stuff that you're seeing on that project page and then some, sort of giving everyone an update about the stuff around there. So really, more than anything, follow Sean, follow Evil Hat Official on your social media of choice, and a lot of that information will come out there. Um, so what I would say more than anything in answer to that question is, if you go to our website and in one of the leftmost drop-down menus, there's a project status link. Click on that, you'll get to the project status page that Boyd looked at, and you'll be able to see practically everything other than the stuff that I can't talk about um, uh, on that page, and you'll get a good sense of where each thing is at, because we're very very oriented on transparency. A friend of mine in the industry, Jeff Tidball, once called me pathologically transparent.
Oh, okay.
And that's accurate.
And Jeff, that's Atlas Games. Talk about a fantastic company.
Oh,
so that's
fact,
high praise.
Yeah. We're actually in a really wonderful partnership with Atlas Games right now because they are warehousing our product.
Oh, okay.
They are where our stuff lives and gets out to distributors all across the globe.
Oh, fantastic. Well, so this is going to conclude the second part of our three-part series here. Fred Hicks from Evil Hat. Thank you so much for joining us. The third episode will be up soon, TM, and we look forward to joining you again once all three episodes are up. We will throw a copy of the unedited full interview
so many
up for all
important
of you.
things are in that. So many important things. We're going to do a whole commentary track. It'll be great.
Ooh. I had no idea.
Revealed here.
Thanks, everybody. All right, well, everyone, welcome back. This is Boyd Stevenson with Game Castle. I am joined by Fred Hicks from Evil Hat Productions. Thank you so much for being here, Fred. This is the third part of our series, and this is where I jump in and say, but wait, there's more. It's more than just having a designer and a publisher here to talk about what they've going on. We're going to talk about a little project called Bits Mortar. Fred, you want to tell everyone about what Bits Mortar is?
Sure. Bits Mortar is it's not a company. It's an alliance. It's a program where a number of publishers, in fact, we have like 180 publishers or something like that signed on, have agreed to make PDFs of their books available so that retailers who also sign up for the program can send copies of PDFs for free to their customers when their customers buy the books.
So you're saying all they have to do is buy the book at retail
And then
at a
say, hey,
participating
can I get the
retailer,
PDF for that?
and they get a free copy of the PDF.
Hopefully, the retailer has trained the people at the cash register what to do. Okay, I'll take down your email address. I'll write down the titles that you got, and we'll send you the PDFs that qualify.
And full disclosure, we at Gamecastle are not always the best at that, but that's why we have a fantastic Discord that has a very active management community on it, so that you can reach out to us directly and say, "Hey, I ordered this. Can you hook us up?" And we 100% will.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping a retailer from retroactively going like, "Oh yeah, you bought that book. Now I'm signed up for Bits and Mortar. Now I can send you that stuff." That's perfectly fine. The idea behind Bits and Mortar ultimately is to make it possible for the small business population that is publishers and the small business population that is your friendly local game stores to help each other out as much as possible to make sure that the value add of the PDF is something that is a part of that small business experience. You're not going to get, generally, a few publishers have exceptions, but you're generally not going to get a PDF for buying the book at a discount on Amazon. You're not. But if you're buying from a retailer like Gamecastle, you absolutely will. Sometimes you might need to do a little bit of customer service emailing, but it's really low hassle. And it's low tech in a lot of ways too. We're not trying to make it complicated. It's just collect an email address, have a list of PDFs, and send them to your customers when you got the time. Some people do that at sort of the closing out the business week or closing out the day. Sometimes they do it right there and then. It's up to the individual retailer.
And to manage expectations, folks, here, Wizards of the Coast does not participate.
No.
Paizo does not participate.
No.
But there are exactly. But there are a lot of publishers that people would know out there. Do you want to throw some of the?
Yeah. Well, there's Evil Hat.
Whoa!
What? Pelgrane Press, one of the in fact founding members.
Oh, excellent.
We can talk about that later if you want. Chaosium. This is where I started to realize Bits Mortar has been around for at least a decade, but it really just started to snowball. I feel like maybe aided by the pandemic a bit, because not that long ago, just a few years, Chaosium signed up. We got Artel Saurian just before they released Cyberpunk Red. So there are some surprising, what I would call old guard publishers that have actually started to come around to the originally very indie idea of Bits and Mortar, because the customers universally love it, and the retailers have an opportunity to not feel like PDFs are the enemy. And I don't know how hooked in you were back when drive-through RPG started becoming like this really big thing. I remember it being like late 90s, early aughts. It started to
the whole PDF really product exploded.
Idea started to snowball. And there was the split. There was RPG Now and drive-through, but they've since become one happy family now. But there was a lot of retailer, and I think justifiable angst at the time about PDFs being the threat to like it's the brick and mortar, the pen and paper, the actual physical object retail. I can tell you now, 20 odd years later, that concern has not really manifested. There are still plenty of people who still want the hard copy physical book. But
we in the paper manufacturing and game store conspiracy cabal spend a lot of time and effort trying to help people realize that's what they want.
Exactly. But there's also a proliferation of mobile devices. There's greater acceptance of PDF as a way to deliver games. But generally, people don't feel too good about spending $40 on a copy of Monsters of the Week and then going and spending $20 to get the PDF just so they can also do a text search on their mobile device instead of, wait, where is that in the physical book? You still often want the physical book to like kind of experience linearly or leaf through or hold three places simultaneously.
We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. We were talking about 5th edition earlier. Obviously, you got to have your fingers in a few different pages at a time. So like each format does its own thing well, but the content is universal between them. And
Mhm.
Bits and Mortar kind of says, well, let's get rid of that distinction and say that when you have the book, you also have the PDF because ultimately you're buying the content and in a deluxe wrapper. So why not also have it in another format that also gives you more utility? It makes you more engaged with the game. It makes you more happy about buying from the retailer if it's possible to get the PDF at no additional cost along with the book. It's a good deal for everyone.
It really is. It's a fantastic program. I look at this from a perspective. I think it really helps grow community by getting people into a space where they can play and where they can be exposed to a lot of different role playing games.
Yeah. Like I said, 180 publishers. A lot of them are indie publishers, but we've also gotten some pretty sizable ones too.
And
Free League is a part of it too.
Oh, so. Yeah, really. Actually rereading some old Coriolis stuff last night.
There you go.
But Game Castle is a participant. But if I'm just a regular old shopper, maybe I'm not in the suburban Maryland area,
sure.
And I want to find out if my store participates. How do I do that?
If you go to bitsandmortar.com, you can do it with hyphens between the words or not. They both work.
It's good design.
And, yes. And go to, I believe it's retailers tab. There's a store locator down there if it's not already linked up at the top. But look for the store locator. You can set a amount of distance from an address, and it will show you the stores that are in that radius.
Oh,
now, those stores have to have actually input their address information correctly for the thing to be able to understand that. But once that's done, then you'll turn them up. Now, I can't promise that every single store that pops up will have a knowledgeable person at the counter. That's an internal training thing to each store. And sometimes there are stores that, for whatever reason, didn't tell us that they closed forever. They probably had other things on their mind. So we might have some old records in there, but please just let us know if that's the case, and I'll edit them out of the database as
needed. And for the stores that haven't closed,
which is many.
Yes. Right. If you talk to your store and they say, "Oh, we're not," how do they go about connecting their store?
Point them to the exact same place. The retailers page has information on how to sign up as a retailer. But it's a super complicated process. Basically, you tell us your website address, tell us your physical address, give us a photo that shows that you're an actual brick and mortar store, because that's an important bedrock part of this. And we're trying to help retailers retain customers so that they can pay their rent. It's a real thing in retail. And you submit that, and then generally when it gets to the weekend and I have some free time to sit down with the Bits and Mortar queue, sure. Then I go through the list of applications we've gotten, and it's very rare that we get a store putting an application that misses the boat. Like they're an online only retailer, they only do conventions or something like that. And we do make the occasional exception if it makes sense for their particulars. But generally we're looking for physical stores that could use the leg up. Very, very, very simple process.
I have to say, we absolutely love it. I sort of compare Bits and Mortar to being, it's sort of like your local library in the sense that it's this wonderful, great tool out there that really doesn't get the press that it really deserves, because it brings so many good things to the hobby. And
I mean, also speaking for the smaller publishers out there who can sign up through a similar process to the publishers tab. For the smaller publishers out there, it's also an opportunity for those retailers to browse through what all is out there, and maybe take a look at a PDF of something that they haven't ordered yet, and say, oh, this is actually going to really click for one of the people at my store. Let me at least order in a copy and see if I can get that when the time's attractive.
And speaking of which, are there any new publishers who've joined recently you'd like to?
There are possibly one that might have been nudged that way by a certain person at this table. That's not me. Could that be? Lame Mage signed up just the other day. That's Ben Robbins, publisher of Microscope, is probably the one you've heard of. But I think he's got some new stuff coming out.
Yeah, he's got a Kickstarter out right now for a project called In This World,
that's right.
Which it looks to be absolutely silly and a lot of fun. We pick a topic that can be anything from dragons to dating, and then after we determine which of the topics we want, everyone sort of starts positing this world, and they say, in this world there are still dragons, but they're all accountants now.
Yeah.
And then we work collectively to talk about how a world where all the dragons are wearing their green shades and doing their work on their abacuses, abaci. I don't know. You know,
I'll allow
it. What does that mean for everything else in the world?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
you really can create some very some interesting things. We're actually gonna have a playtest in store here on June 25th.
Right
So I lie. I think it might be June 24th. It
June?
is
Or do you mean July?
July 24th. Thank
We're-
you. See,
June is
look,
in the past.
I missed hours, and anyway. Yes, it's
3-part
June.
interviews. It plays with the time stream.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that our editors are going to have a chyron below saying this is when it actually is.
Yes.
But it is a Monday evening, and so we're pretty pumped about the opportunity to do that. And
Well, Ben is absolutely a magician of like setting domain tools, like that the stuff that you can do with microscope is rightly legend in many a circle.
And we're
the world
thrilled
sounds like
that
in this world sounds like it's in that same vein.
that yeah, we're thrilled that you're working with them and that you're
Absolutely.
providing
I'm
this
thrilled.
absolutely fantastic tool. All right, well, this is we're kind of coming to the end, and we've skipped this sort of outro a bit until now, but you know, number one, Fred, thank you so much for coming in and chatting today. If people want to know more about you, Evil Hat Productions, projects that y'all have got, what is the best way to sort of do that?
Hit evilhat.com, poke around, find your way to our mailing list, find us on social media, check out our project status page, and you'll get a pretty solid view on pretty much everything we're doing, other than the secrets.
Well, thank you again for joining us. Any last things you want to hit for closing before we go?
Oh gosh, y'all should do more D&D camps so my kids can keep coming to the store and begging me for games every day.
You know that there you go. It's more than just than summer childcare. It's also you don't have to DM time. Well, Fred, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you everyone for watching. You know, the Game Castle College Park. This has been Boyd. Remember, when people get together to game, the good times will roll.